The phone rang as I was finishing breakfast, a simple meal of oatmeal and coffee on the worn oak table. It was an old rotary model, its dial scratched from years of use. I refused to swap it for something sleek and modern, despite my son's relentless teasing. Mary, my late wife, always swore that phone would bring us luck. But luck slipped out of our lives when she passed 6 years ago, leaving a void in our home on Oak Street. Hello. My voice rasped, rough from disuse. Morning calls were rare. The silence of my days was seldom broken. Dad, it's Michael. I straightened in my chair, an involuntary reflex, as if my son could see me through the line. Michael rarely called, only when he needed something, his voice carrying that familiar edge of impatience. Good morning, son. How's everything? Listen, my birthday's this Saturday. You remember? Right, Michael didn't wait for my answer. Barreling on. We're hosting a family dinner. Susan insists you come. I knew that wasn't true. My daughter-in-law Susan never pushed for my presence. If anything, she was the one suggesting I be left off invitations. And Michael agreed, thinking my absence would dodge awkward family questions. Of course I remember your birthday, I said, forcing warmth into my tone. 44's a fine age. 45. Dad. I'm turning 45, he corrected sharply. Oh, yes. My apologies. I'd genuinely forgotten. After 65, the years blur together, memories slipping like sand through fingers. So, you'll be there at 7 tonight. His voice carried that restless edge, eager to end the call. Of course, I'll be there. Can I bring anything, the need? Michael replied curtly. Just, be on time. I promised not to be late. My words hanging in the air as we said goodbye. Michael hung up first, as he always did, the click abrupt and final. I set aside my half-eaten toast, its edges gone cold, and stared out the kitchen window at the gray April sky over Springfield, Illinois. The weather was typical for our town, caught in a limbo between winter's chill and spring's promise, as if nature itself couldn't decide its next step. That's exactly how I'd been feeling these past years, adrift in a life that no longer felt fully mine. The invitation to my son's birthday didn't spark joy, only a gnawing anxiety that settled deep in my chest. The last 4 family gatherings had followed the same script. Michael would steer the conversation to my house, his words cloaked in concern but sharp with intent. It's too big for one person. Dad, too expensive to maintain. You'd be better off in a senior community, where they'd look after you. I wasn't fooled. Behind his feigned worry was a hunger for money, the kind that would come from selling the house I'd built for Mary 35 years ago with my own hands. Board by board, nail by nail. I'd lived in Springfield my entire life, 40 years as a mail carrier, walking the same streets I'd played on as a boy. I knew every barking dog, every creaky gate, every whispered story behind the town's closed doors. People entrusted me with their letters, their cards, their packages, the small joys and sorrows of their lives. I was woven into this town's fabric, and it was part of me. The house on Oak Street was more than brick and mortar. It was the last tether to Mary, to the days when our children were small, their eyes bright with respect rather than the thinly veiled irritation I now faced. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my knees protesting each step, and entered the bedroom I'd once shared with Mary. The air held a quiet stillness, as if her presence lingered in the corners. I opened the closet, the hinges creaking softly, and gazed at the dark blue suit I'd bought for her funeral. I'd worn it only a few times since, its fabric now too loose for my frame. I'd lost weight this past year, my body shrinking as if trying to match the emptiness inside. The suit hung beside Mary's summer dresses, their colors faded but untouched since her passing. I'd never found the strength to pack them away. Sometimes, I swore I caught a faint trace of her lavender and vanilla scent, though the doctor said it was just memory playing tricks, conjuring what I longed for. Trying on the suit, I stood before the mirror. The pants sagged, held up only by a tightened belt, and the jacket draped over my shoulders like it belonged to someone larger. Mary would have laughed, saying I looked like a scarecrow from Farmer Johnson's cornfield down the road. The thought brought a bittersweet smile to my lips. I hung the suit back with care, knowing it would be too formal for Michael's birthday. He'd probably think I was losing it, dressing up like that. He already saw me as half senile, though at 70, my mind remained sharp, my hands steady. I forgot small things, birthdays, bills, but on what mattered, I was as clear as ever. Saturday dawned early, the first light filtering through the curtains, a habit from decades of rising before the town woke. I ate oatmeal, as Mary always insisted it was good for the heart, and spent the morning in the garden. The soil was finally warm enough for planting, and this year, I decided to try broccoli. Mary loved it, steaming it with butter for Sunday dinners. Though I'd never quite gotten the knack, but our grandchildren, especially 9-year-old Sophie, ate it with such gusto that I wanted to try for her. By noon, the garden beds were neat, and I washed up, the dirt under my nails a badge of a morning well spent. I made a ham sandwich, the bread slightly stale, and turned on the old radio Mary and I bought in the 80s. It hummed to life, broadcasting some political scandal in Washington. I tuned it out. Politics had always felt like a dirty game to me, more so in recent years. After lunch, I settled on the living room couch for a nap, knowing the evening would be draining. The couch sat beneath a framed photo of Mary and me by Lake Michigan, taken during our last vacation together, a year before her cancer diagnosis stole her away. The alarm jolted me awake at 4. Showering and shaving took 40 minutes, my movements slower with age, though I'd never admit it aloud. I chose dark brown slacks and a plaid shirt Mary had given me for our final Christmas together, its fabric soft from wear. No tie. I decided Michael would find something to criticize regardless. By 5, I was ready, but too early to leave. Michael's house was across Springfield, in a new suburb where young, moneyed families built their lives. A 25-minute drive. No more. I sat in the armchair by the window, where Mary used to knit in the evenings, her needles clicking rhythmically. Outside, neighborhood kids raced down the street, their laughter echoing. My own children once ran there too. Emily always serious, a little adult even then, while Michael was loud, demanding, always wanting more. Mary said he inherited my stubbornness, but I saw my father in him, a man who took what he wanted without apology. At 6:20, I left, locking the door with care. My old Ford coughed to life on the 3rd try, another point for Michael's mockery. You're driving a death trap. Dad, it's dangerous. It'll stall mid-road. Then what? But the car was reliable. Like me. Despite its years, the drive to Michael's was familiar but unsettling. Passing rows of new houses with manicured lawns and identical mailboxes, I felt like an outsider. Springfield was changing, shedding its small-town warmth for something glossier, less familiar. Maybe it was just the grumbling of an old man, but I missed the town of my youth. I pulled up to Michael's house, a 2-story brick structure with pretentious columns at the entrance. Columns in Springfield, where the tallest building was the three-story town hall. Several unfamiliar cars lined the street, signaling other guests. This eased my nerves slightly. Strangers might keep Michael from pressing his house-selling agenda. I parked behind a silver minivan, likely Emily and her husband Robert's. So my daughter was already here. We hadn't seen much of each other lately. She lived 4 hours away in Seattle. Busy with her insurance job, Emily was always kinder than Michael, though even she thought I should move on after Mary's death. I eased out of the car, my back stiff from the 30-minute drive. From the back seat, I retrieved a small package, a gift for Michael, my father's old silver cufflinks, polished to a soft gleam. He'd never wear them, but they were a family heirloom, and I clung to tradition. Before I could ring the bell, the front door swung open, and there stood Sophie, my 9-year-old granddaughter, her smile wide, showing off her oversized new adult teeth. "Grandpa." She launched herself at me, nearly knocking the cane from my hand. I hugged her back with one arm, her warmth a rare spark of sincerity in a family grown distant. "Hello, Sophie. How's my favorite granddaughter? I'm your only granddaughter, Grandpa." She laughed, grabbing my hand and pulling me inside. The hallway smelled of cinnamon and apples, likely Susan's famous pie baking in the kitchen. Voices and muffled laughter spilled from the living room, a mix of familiar and strange. Sophie tugged my sleeve, her eyes bright. "Guess what? Grandpa, I lost another tooth." She opened her mouth wide, pointing to the gap in her bottom teeth. "Has the tooth fairy come yet?" I asked, shrugging off my jacket. "Dad, stop filling her head with fairy tales." Michael's voice cut in. He stood in the living room doorway, tall, with gray streaking his hair but still lean and sharp. "Hello? Dad, you're right on time." His tone suggested he'd expected me to be late. I nodded, handing him the gift. "Happy birthday, son." Michael took it with a slight grimace, his emotions always plain on his face, even as a child. "Thanks," he said, enthusiasm lacking. "Come in. Everyone's gathered." I followed him into the living room, where sofas and armchairs were filled with guests. Emily approached immediately, wrapping me in a hug and kissing my cheek. Her perfume was expensive, floral, nothing like Mary's simple lavender water. "Dad, I'm so glad to see you." Her eyes, so like her mother's, glowed with genuine warmth. "You look well." It was a kind lie. I knew how I looked: old, gaunt, wrinkles carved deeper since Mary's passing. But the lie felt comforting. "You too, daughter," I replied. And it was true. Emily had always been beautiful, even through the awkward teenage years that trip up most kids. Robert, her husband, shook my hand with a firm but gentle grip. A good man, an accountant, quiet and reliable. Mary had approved of him, her highest praise. "Hello, Mr. Harrington," he said with a smile. "How are you?" "Not bad for an old man," I said, settling into the chair he offered. The other guests were vaguely familiar Michael's business associates, neighbors whose names I couldn't recall. They nodded politely, but didn't engage, their smiles surface level. I was a stranger here, despite my blood ties. Susan appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a crisp apron. My daughter-in-law was attractive, not a classic beauty, but with neat features and a figure preserved after 2 children. Her brown hair was pulled into a tidy bun, and her smile, polite as ever, never reached her eyes. "Hello, Earl," she said, using my first name as always, never dad or father, as if I were a distant acquaintance. Glad you could make it. I nodded, accepting the wine glass she offered. Thanks for the invitation. Susan, your home's always so warm. Another lie. Michael and Susan's house was anything but warm, too perfect. Too pristine, like a showroom from a design magazine. Not a book out of place. Not a picture frame askew. Mary used to call such homes unlivable. Cold spaces lacking soul. My grandson Jack, Michael's 13-year-old, slipped into the room and slouched in a corner, eyes glued to his phone. I waved, but he ignored me, pretending not to see. At his age, being seen with his grandfather wasn't cool. Dinner unfolded in a tense atmosphere. I stayed polite, answering questions about my health, the house, how I managed alone. Michael and Susan exchanged frequent glances, a silent conversation I wasn't privy to. I caught Emily's frown when Michael brought up my house for the 4th time, his words dripping with false concern. After the main course, a succulent roast duck with oranges, Susan brought out the birthday cake. Its 45 candles, a near fire hazard. Michael blew them out in one mighty breath, earning applause from the guests before cutting the cake. He stood, wineglass in hand, his posture commanding attention. I have news to share, he announced. Some of you know, but for the rest, it's a surprise. His eyes locked on mine, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. Here it comes, I thought, the house talk. My printing company, Harrington Print, has been offered a major contract with the Lux Stay Hotels chain. It means expansion, new equipment, more staff, maybe even new premises. The guests murmured approval, nodding. Michael raised a hand for silence. Of course. It requires investment. I've applied for a bank loan, and we've got preliminary approval. But he looked at me again. The bank needs additional collateral, something more substantial than our house, which is already mortgaged. Every eye turned to me. Emily shook her head, a subtle gesture of disapproval. Dad, Michael said, turning fully to me. Susan and I have been thinking about your house on Oak Street. It's big, old, needs constant upkeep. It's hard for you to manage alone. I manage just fine, I said, my voice low but firm. Of course you do, Michael replied, his smile condescending, one I'd grown to hate. But we're all worried. What if you fall? What if there's a fire? You're far from us. We can't get there quickly. I wanted to snap that they rarely visited, even when I asked. But I held back, not in front of strangers. What's your point? Michael, I asked, though I knew the answer. We found a great place in Sunset Hills, a new senior complex on the edge of town. They have medical staff, a communal dining room, even a swimming pool. Most importantly, you'd be among people your age, not alone. I don't want to live among people my age, I said. I want to stay in my house. Michael sighed, as if explaining to a stubborn child. Dad, be reasonable. If you sell the house, you'll have enough to live comfortably in Sunset Hills for the rest of your life, with plenty left for other things. Your business. I finished for him. The room fell into an awkward silence. Emily coughed softly. Michael, can we not do this tonight? It's a celebration. After all, my son ignored her. It's a win-win. Dad, you'd be safe, taken care of, and I can expand the business, secure a future for my kids, your grandkids. Isn't that what Mom would have wanted? Mentioning Mary ignited a fury in me sharper than any manipulation. Don't you dare say what your mother would have wanted, I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger. Mary would never have approved of me being pushed out of the home I built for her. "No one's talking about pushing you out," Susan interjected, her voice soft but insistent. "It'd be your choice, for your own good." I looked at her, then at Michael, and realized they'd already made up their minds. They'd likely prepared the paperwork, maybe even reserved a spot at Sunset Hills. "I need to think about it," I said, rising from the table. "It's a big decision." "Of course," Michael said, his smile tight, eyes cold. "Think about it. But not too long. The bank gave us 3 weeks to provide collateral, or the contract goes to a competitor." I nodded, my voice unreliable. Emily shot her brother a sharp look but stayed silent. Robert stared at his plate, visibly uncomfortable. The guests exchanged glances, unsure how to react to the family tension. Susan, ever adept at smoothing rough edges, clapped her hands. And now, the cake who wants a piece. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but the strain lingered. I sat in silence, picking at the cake, its sweetness lost on me. My mind churned with thoughts of the house, of Mary, of how quickly my children had forgotten the values we'd instilled: respect for elders, family unity, selflessness. When Michael raised the toast to his future success, I lifted my glass with the others but didn't drink. I looked at my son and saw a stranger, someone who saw me as an obstacle to greater wealth. What happened to us? Mary, I thought, staring out the window at the darkening Springfield sky. Where did we go wrong? The dinner dragged on in a strained atmosphere, the earlier house talk casting a long shadow. Guests tried to act as if nothing had happened, their voices a touch too loud, their laughter tinged with nerves. Their glances slid my way, marking me as the unwitting center of attention, an old man facing displacement under the guise of care. It was the kind of family drama everyone hoped to avoid in their own lives. Susan bustled around the table, refilling wine glasses and offering more dessert. Her movements brisk, her smile fixed like a mask. She was a perfectionist, and any crack in her flawless family facade threw her off balance. Michael, to my surprise, didn't let up. The wine loosened him further, emboldening him to push his point, as if the alcohol fueled a speech he'd rehearsed for weeks. "You know," he said, addressing the guests but fixing his gaze on me. "My dad's always been stubborn. Mary, my mom, used to say it was easier to move a mountain than change his mind." A few guests chuckled politely, their laughter hollow. I kept my expression neutral, though inside, anger simmered. Michael rarely spoke of his mother by name in my presence, a subtle way to distance himself, to claim Mary wasn't just mine. But this isn't about stubbornness anymore. How to put it gently, he paused, as if searching for words, though I was certain he'd planned every syllable. It's an unwillingness to face reality. Age changes us all. "Michael," Emily said softly, a warning in her tone. He ignored her. "3 weeks ago," he continued, "I stopped by Dad's house unannounced. Guess what I found? The gas stove was on no flame, just gas leaking. Dad was sitting there, reading the newspaper, completely unaware. It was a blatant lie. 3 weeks ago, Michael had visited, but there was no stove incident. I wanted to call him out, but objecting would look like an excuse, admitting weakness. "Last month," Michael said, raising his voice, sensing he had the room's attention, "Dad forgot to pay the electric bill. I had to go over and sort it out. And before that, there was the time he left his keys in the door. I had missed the electric bill once in years, but not from forgetfulness. I was in the hospital with pneumonia. Michael conveniently left that out. Son, I said, cutting in with forced calm, I appreciate your concern, but don't exaggerate. Exaggerate, Michael threw up his hands. Theatrical. Dad, you don't see what's happening. That's normal at your age. But we, your family, see it clearly. You're not the same. What am I supposed to be like at 70, I asked, my face tight with restrained anger. Michael gave that indulgent smile I loathed. That's exactly my point. You're 71. Dad, you forgot your age again. I had turned 71 in February, but I still thought of myself as 70, the days blending into a monotonous haze. To the guests, though, it was another sign of my decline. Michael turned to them, as if I were no longer part of the conversation. Susan and I found a wonderful place. Sunset Hills isn't a nursing home, as some might assume. It's an active senior living complex. I noticed guests exchanging looks. Everyone knew active living was just a softer term for a nursing home, designed to sound less daunting. It has everything you need, Susan added, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. Nurses on call around the clock, panic buttons in every room, a dining hall with a dietary menu. And it's affordable, Emily murmured, her voice barely audible. Not cheap, Michael conceded with a nod. But if we sell Dad's house, there'll be enough to cover years at Sunset Hills. We'd have to sell it eventually. So why not now, when it can do some good? Good for whom, I asked, locking eyes with my son. The room fell silent again, the air thick with unease. Aubert coughed, trying to shift the mood. This is a fantastic cake. Susan, did you make it yourself? But Michael didn't let her answer. Good for everyone. Dad, safety and care for you, peace of mind for us. And yes, for my business too, I'm not hiding that. Don't you want your kids and grandkids to prosper? I want my children and grandchildren to respect my wishes, I said, my voice steady but firm. This house isn't just an asset. It's we know, Michael interrupted, rolling his eyes. The house you built for Mom. We've heard that story 1,000 times. But Mom's been gone 6 years, and you're clinging to the past instead of looking to the future. Mentioning Mary in that tone cut deeper than any accusation of failure. My fingertips went numb, a sign of rising blood pressure. I took a slow, deep breath, exhaling as Dr. Thompson had taught me. Let's change the subject, Emily suggested, noticing my distress. Today's Michael's birthday, not a family meeting. Yeah, you're right, Michael said, his smile sudden, as if he'd just remembered the occasion. I propose a toast to the future, to new beginnings and bold decisions. He raised his glass, and the guests followed. I lifted mine. Half filled with red wine I rarely drank, it didn't mix well with my medications. To the future. The guests echoed in a scattered chorus, sipping their drinks. As I brought the glass to my lips, I caught a fleeting movement from the corner of my eye. Michael, seated to my right, quickly pulled his hand back from my glass. It was so subtle I nearly missed it, but years as a mail carrier had honed my eye for detail. I pretended to sip, letting the wine hover near my lips without touching them. I examined the glass discreetly, no powder, no color change, but my gut screamed danger. Why would Michael tamper with my drink? My mind raced. Poison, no. Too extreme. Even for him. More likely a laxative or diuretic. Something to humiliate me in front of everyone. To prove I was frail and helpless. See, he can't even control himself. He needs care. The perfect argument to push me toward Sunset Hills. Outrage battled with grief inside me. Would my own son stoop so low for money, or had his resentment grown so deep that he'd degrade his father for petty satisfaction? The table conversation drifted back to normalcy local news. Children, politics, the safe topics of family dinners. I barely joined in. My thoughts consumed by what to do next. I could refuse to drink, but that would still play into Michael's hands. He'd call me paranoid, accuse me of fearing my own family, spinning tales of conspiracy, another mark of senility. Confront him now. No one would believe an old man without proof. Michael would laugh, point to the guests and say, "See what I mean?" Then an idea struck. Simple but sharp, an eye for an eye. As the Bible says, if Michael wanted embarrassment tonight, it wouldn't be me. I waited for the right moment. When everyone was caught up in a guest's story about a fishing trip, a giant trout that slipped the hook, a tale as old as time. The narrator waved his arms dramatically, describing the fish's imagined size, holding the room's attention, seizing the chance. I swapped my glass with Susan's, who sat to my left. The glasses were close. It took only a quick, unnoticed motion. My conscience twinged. Susan didn't deserve to be the target. But then I recalled her cold glances, her support for Michael's efforts to push me out, her excuses for keeping the grandkids away, claiming I was too tired. She wasn't innocent, she was complicit. And then I said to him, "Frank, either you land that fish now, or I'm shoving you in the lake," the storyteller finished, drawing laughter. Michael raised his glass to timeless fishing tales, and everyone drank again. I sipped from Susan's glass, the wine's faint bitterness familiar. No odd taste, whatever was in it was tasteless, likely a laxative. I wondered how quickly it would work. Susan drained her glass nearly empty, drinking faster than Mary would have deemed proper. Michael glanced at me, checking my glass, seeing it near empty. He gave a small, smug smile, the kind he'd worn as a kid after pulling a prank, like hiding my glasses or slipping a frog into Emily's bed. The conversation rolled on. Emily shared news of her promotion at the insurance firm, her and Robert's plans for a European summer trip. Michael chimed in with hints about his business, the big contract that would elevate their lives, ordinary dreams of better days. I watched Susan carefully, trying not to draw attention. About 20 minutes after her drink, her face changed, she paled, swallowing hard, as if fighting nausea. "Susan, are you okay?" Emily asked. The first to notice, Susan managed a weak smile. "Yes, just something." She didn't finish, pressing a hand to her stomach. Honey, Michael turned, his voice thick with concern. Susan tried to speak, but a low moan escaped instead. She stood abruptly, knocking over her empty glass. "Excuse me. I have to." She rushed from the dining room without another word. Silence fell over the table. Guests exchanged uneasy looks, unsure how to react. Michael frowned. "Must be a stomach thing. She's been cooking all day. Barely ate." "Maybe she needs help," Emily suggested, half rising. "I'll check," Michael said, hurrying after his wife. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some offered more wine. Others mumbled about the weather, typical responses to an awkward moment. I sat still, striving for a neutral expression, though inside, satisfaction warred with shame. What would Mary think of my petty retaliation? Michael returned minutes later, his face a mix of worry and irritation. "Susan's not well," he announced. She apologizes but can't come back to the table. What's wrong? Robert asked. Should we call a doctor? No, Michael said quickly. Just an upset stomach. It happens. He shot me a strange look, as if trying to piece something together. I feigned concern. I hope it's not serious. Maybe the food. Everyone ate the same thing, Michael pointed out. No one else is sick. Maybe an allergy, a guest suggested. My sister can't handle shellfish. She gets like that. Susan's not allergic, Michael said, shaking his head. Probably just overworked with the party prep. The conversation slowly regained its rhythm, but the mood had shifted. Without the hostess, the party felt hollow, its center gone. Guests began checking their watches, whispering excuses. One neighbor left first, citing an early morning, and others followed. I decided it was time to go. I thanked Michael for the invitation and called out a wish for Susan's recovery through the bathroom door she never emerged from. Emily offered to walk me to my car. Are you okay? Dad, she asked as we stood in the driveway. That house talk Michael shouldn't have brought it up today. Not in front of everyone. I'm fine, I said, though it wasn't entirely true. Don't worry about me. I do worry, she said, resting a hand on my shoulder. You're still my dad, and I want you to be happy. But Michael's right in a way. The house is too big for you alone. Don't start. Emily, I said, pulling away gently. Not tonight. She sighed. Okay, but promise you'll think about it. Not a nursing home, but maybe a smaller apartment or moving in with Robert and me. We have a guest room with a private bath. I'll think about it. I promised, knowing I wouldn't budge. The house was my last link to Mary, to our life, to a past growing hazier each day. Emily hugged me goodbye, her perfume sharp but somehow reminiscent of Mary's tenderness, a fleeting echo in her touch. As I slid into the car, the front door flew open, and Michael appeared, his face contorted with anger even in the dim light. Dad, he strode toward me, ignoring Emily nearby. What did you do? What are you talking about, son? I asked, my voice calm and surprised. Don't play dumb, he snapped, nearly shouting. Susan's really sick. What did you slip her? Emily gasped. Michael! What are you saying? Dad didn't do anything. Then why is she locked in the bathroom with... He stopped, aware of his sister, and lowered his voice. An upset stomach. What else but poisoning? Maybe food poisoning, I offered. Or a virus. Don't try to fool me, Michael said, leaning into the open car window, his face inches from mine. I saw you switch the glasses. Think I'm blind, I stayed composed, though my heart raced. I don't know what you mean. Michael, what glasses? You know exactly, he growled through clenched teeth. Yours and Susan's. You figured it out somehow and got revenge. You won't get away with this. Old man. Michael. That's enough, Emily said, pulling him back from the car. You're drunk and talking nonsense. Dad didn't poison anyone. Why would he? Michael's glare burned with hatred, a heat I could almost feel. But there was confusion, too. A flicker of doubt. He knew I'd thwarted his plan. But how eluded him? This isn't over, he said quietly, the menace sharper without shouting. You can't hold on to the past forever. Dad, change is coming, whether you like it or not. He turned and marched back to the house, leaving Emily stunned. What was that about? She asked, stepping closer to the car. Why is he accusing you of poisoning Susan? That's absurd. I shrugged. Your brother's always been dramatic. Probably had too much wine. Emily shook her head. No, Something's wrong. I've never seen him this angry. She studied me. Dad, are you sure you don't know why he's so upset? I could have told her the truth, how Michael tried to humiliate me with a spiked drink, how I turned it back on Susan. Emily was fair. She'd understand. Maybe, but something held me back. Maybe I didn't want to drag her into the rift between me and her brother. Maybe I was ashamed of my own pettiness. Or maybe I was just weary, yearning for the quiet of my empty house. I don't know. Honey, I said, starting the car. Maybe it'll be clearer by morning. Say hi to Robert for me. Emily wasn't satisfied, but she didn't press. She hugged me through the window and stepped back, letting me pull out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing with arms crossed, watching me go. Farther back, Michael's silhouette loomed in the lit doorway, his gaze fixed on us. I drove through Springfield's dark streets, a strange mix of satisfaction and bitterness swirling within me. Tonight was just a symptom of a deeper wound. Our family had fractured, and I wasn't sure if I could piece it back together. The radio played an old song, one Mary and I used to listen to in our youth, its melody soft and wistful. It carried me back to simpler times, when the future seemed bright, when my children looked at me with love instead of annoyance. What happened to us? Mary, I thought. The dark road stretching ahead. Where did it all go wrong? There was no answer, only the gentle hum of the radio and the certainty that tomorrow would bring the consequences of tonight's choices. I woke early the next morning, as always, my body still wired to the mail carrier's dawn routine. At 71, old habits clung like shadows. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house's silence, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock Mary bought at a garage sale our first year of marriage. Outside, birds chirped, their songs a quiet herald of spring's growing strength, indifferent to human troubles. Last night's events flooded back in sharp, unpleasant detail: Michael's attempt to spike my wine, my quick switch with Susan's glass, his furious accusations in the driveway, Emily's bewildered expression. None of it promised an easy path forward. I rose slowly, my joints creaking, a reminder of age's toll, though I fought it with the morning stretches doctor. Thompson prescribed simple moves to keep my body from betraying me. Breakfast was modest oatmeal with dried fruit, a mug of strong tea. Mary used to insist on hearty meals: bacon, eggs, toast slathered with butter, but since her passing, I'd shifted to simpler fare. Cooking for one felt pointless, the kitchen too quiet without her humming. I was washing dishes when the phone rang, the clock reading 8 a.m., too early for casual calls. I knew it was Michael before I answered. "Hello," I said, wiping my hands on a faded kitchen towel. "Are you happy with yourself?" Michael's voice was rough, as if he hadn't slept. "Good morning, son," I replied, keeping my tone even. "What's this early call about? Don't act like you don't know," he snapped, fury crackling through the line. "Susan spent the night in the bathroom, still sick. I had to take her to the hospital at 4 this morning." Guilt stabbed me. I hadn't expected the reaction to be so severe. What had Michael planned to slip me if it hit Susan so hard? "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, sincere. "What do the doctors say? Acute stomach upset." "'Cause unknown," he hissed. "But you and I both know what it is, don't we?" "What did you put in her wine?" "I didn't put anything in her wine," I said firmly. "And I think you know that." There was a heavy pause, the kind that carries weight. I could almost hear him clenching his jaw, weighing whether to push or confess. You switched the glasses, he said finally. Quieter. Less aggressive. I saw it. Suppose I did. I replied, not denying it. But what was in Susan's glass was meant for me, and we both know who put it there. Silence stretched again. Longer this time. When Michael spoke, his voice was tired, almost resigned. It was a harmless laxative, just to embarrass you a bit in front of the guests, to show you can't live alone, no harm to your health. Harmless, I echoed, incredulous. Susan's in the hospital. Maybe she's allergic. He shot back defensively. Or maybe you messed up and slipped her something else. You haven't been yourself lately. Dad, I took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. Michael had always been this way. Even as a boy, never admitting fault, always shifting blame. Anyway, I said, I hope Susan recovers soon. Pass on my apologies. Apologies. He laughed bitterly. You think a sorry fixes what you did? And what did you expect after your stunt? I asked quietly. This is different, he said, conviction in his tone. I did it for your own good. You're a stubborn old man who can't see the obvious. You need help. And the best way to show that is spiking my drink. I shook my head, though he couldn't see. Son, I'm disappointed. Don't you dare call me that. He exploded. Don't pretend to be a caring father. Where was your care when I needed it, when Susan and I were struggling to buy our house? And the bank turned us down because of my credit. When my printing business nearly collapsed its first year, when Jack needed surgery, and insurance didn't cover it all, I fell silent, stunned by the outburst. Some of it held truth. I hadn't always been there. The mail route consumed my days, and I missed moments in my kids' lives. But much was exaggerated. I'd helped with the down payment on their house, stood as guarantor despite Michael's bad credit. I'd given money for Jack's surgery, though Michael later insisted it was a loan and paid it back, rejecting the gift. I've always tried to help you, son, I said finally, but you always wanted more. Enough! Michael cut me off. I didn't call to argue. I just wanted you to know this isn't over. He hung up without waiting for a reply. I slowly set the receiver down, my hands trembling. Anger, hurt, and disappointment churned within me. But the sharpest feeling was the bitter realization of how wide the chasm between me and my son had grown. I'd once held him as a baby, taught him to ride a bike, helped with algebra homework. Now, I was just an obstacle to his ambitions. To shake off the heavy thoughts, I decided to check my email, a task that always felt like wrestling a foreign beast. Computers came into my life too late. I was rooted in paper letters and face-to-face talks. But Mary had insisted I learn. You'll get left behind. Earl, she'd said, her voice gentle but firm. The old computer sat in the small room we called the study. Once a nursery for Emily and Michael, later a haven for documents, photo albums, and family keepsakes. The machine hummed to life, its whir like the old sorting machines at the post office. The desktop loaded slowly, and I opened the browser. Typing my email address from a notepad by the monitor, passwords never stuck in my head. The inbox was overflowing. I hadn't checked it in months, and it was clogged with ads and newsletters I'd accidentally subscribed to and couldn't figure out how to escape. But among the junk were important messages, bank statements, insurance updates, town notices. I sorted through them methodically, deleting the spam, saving what mattered. Then a name caught my eye, First National Bank of Springfield, where I held my account and had guaranteed Michael and Susan's mortgage 4 years ago, not long after Mary's death. They'd been in a cramped apartment on the town's outskirts, and a chance came to buy a house in the new suburb. Michael's bad credit, from a failed venture in his 20s, meant the bank required a guarantor. I'd agreed, thinking it was the right thing, a way to support my son in a tough time. Mary would have approved. I opened the email, a quarterly report on the mortgage I'd guaranteed. Everything seemed in order, regular payments, no delays. But at the bottom, a strange line mentioned an additional loan tied to the same property, taken out 2 months ago. The amount was substantial, far beyond household needs, and shockingly, I was listed as guarantor. I frowned, searching my memory for any recent signatures. There were none. Michael had mentioned needing collateral for his business expansion at dinner, but nothing about a finalized loan, and I certainly hadn't agreed to back it. Alarmed, I dug through other bank emails. Several painted a clear picture. The bank had sent notices for every mortgage payment, most of which I'd missed due to my rare email checks. But the last 7 months showed consistent payments. Then, 2 months ago, messages about a new business loan appeared. One included scanned documents. I opened them, my anxiety spiking. The papers bore my signature or what was meant to pass for it, but I'd never signed them. The handwriting was a crude imitation, nothing like my own. Anyone familiar with my real signature would see the forgery. Michael had forged my name to secure the loan for his business. My own son had used me, without permission or a word, claiming my name and responsibility. Nausea hit me, a sick wave rising in my throat. This wasn't just pushing me to sell the house or move to a nursing home. This was a crime, a betrayal that cut deeper than any disagreement. My mind raced with options: call the bank, the police, confront Michael directly. Each carried weighty consequences. None felt entirely right. Going to the bank or police could mean criminal charges for Michael. Despite everything, he was my son, and the thought of him in jail because of me was unbearable. Mary would never have wanted that. But ignoring it meant letting him get away with it. And if he couldn't pay the loan, I'd be on the hook as guarantor. I could lose the house, my savings, everything I had left. I decided to print the documents for proof. The old printer whirred and clicked, groaning before spitting out each page. I folded them into an envelope and tucked it into the desk drawer with other important papers. Then I called the bank. A friendly woman answered, listened to my question, and transferred me to the mortgage department. "What can I do for you?" a man asked. "I'm Earl Harrington." I began. "I need information on a loan where I'm listed as guarantor. My son, Michael Harrington, took it out. One moment." "Mr. Harrington," he said, keys clacking. "Yes. I see 2 loans with you as guarantor: a mortgage for 15 Maple Street and a business loan from 2 months ago." "Which one?" "The business loan," I said. "When was it made? And what documents did I sign, approved and disbursed April 23rd? He replied, "We have a standard guarantee agreement with your signature and a credit check consent. All in order." "That's the problem," I said, my heart pounding. "I didn't sign any documents. I didn't agree to be guarantor on this loan." A pause. "Mr. Harrington, are you saying your signature was forged?" His voice held concern. "Exactly." I confirmed. "In that case," he said slowly, "you'll need to come to the bank in person with ID and make an official statement. This is serious and may require an investigation, possibly involving the police." "I understand," I said. "When can I come?" "We're open until 6, but mornings are best when management's here." "Tomorrow at 10, I agreed and hung up, a hollow feeling settling in my chest. The decision was made. No turning back. Tomorrow, I'd report the forgery, setting in motion consequences that could change everything for Michael. But something shifted in me after that call. The bitterness and hurt hardened into cold resolve. Michael hadn't just tried to manipulate or humiliate me. He'd committed a crime that could cost me everything, without a flicker of remorse. I remembered his words that morning. This isn't over. He'd threatened me, his own father, because his plan failed. What would he do next? Another loan in my name tried to declare me incompetent to seize my finances, force me into a nursing home. I couldn't let this continue. It was time to draw a line, even if it meant clashing with my son. Some lessons are learned only through pain, and Michael was about to face one. Back in the study, I sat at the computer and opened the word processor, typing slowly with 2 fingers, just as Mary had taught me. I documented everything the past few days, every detail that might matter. A diary, a record. In case things escalated, I printed it, adding the pages to the envelope with the bank documents. Then I pulled out my checkbook and bank statements for the past year, spreading them across the desk. I needed to assess my financial situation, what I risked, what I had to fight with. The numbers were sobering. A mail carrier's pension wasn't much. Most of my savings had gone to Mary's medical bills in her final months. All I had left was the house, fully paid, debt-free but needing constant repairs, and a modest bank account. Enough for a retiree's simple life, but not to cover a large loan if Michael defaulted. I closed my eyes, exhaustion heavy on my shoulders. At my age, I wanted quiet days in the garden, playing with my grandkids, remembering the past with warmth, not fighting family betrayals. What would you do? Mary, I asked silently, looking at her photo on the desk, her smile bright with a bouquet of wildflowers I'd picked for our 30th anniversary. Her eyes seemed to pierce through me, seeing every doubt and fear. I knew her answer. Mary was fair but firm. She wouldn't let Michael's deceit continue. Not for revenge, but to save him from himself. Love sometimes meant toughness, not indulgence. My decision solidified. Tomorrow, I'd go to the bank and report the forgery. I'd withdraw my guarantee on both the mortgage and the business loan. Michael would face the consequences of his actions. Maybe it would force him to rethink his approach to life. Money, family. It would hurt us both. But as Mary's mother used to say, quoting an old proverb, "A boil must be lanced to heal." I put the papers away, shut down the computer, and left the study. The house felt too large, too empty, filled with echoes of the past. But it was my home, my fortress, my last stand, and I wouldn't give it up without a fight. The morning was crisp and clear, perfect for weighty decisions. I rose early, skipping my usual routine to prepare for the bank. I chose my best suit, the dark blue one from Mary's funeral, still loose but fitting for the occasion. I wanted to look serious, respectable. I shaved with extra care, even splashed on some Old Spice, the cologne Mary gave me every Christmas. Its scent stirred memories of holidays when the kids were young, when our family was whole. Those days felt like another lifetime now. I gathered the documents into an old leather briefcase, checked for my ID and bank cards. Everything was in order. One last glance in the mirror showed a weary old man with a determined set to his jaw. "You've got this, Earl," I told my reflection, and headed out. The First National Bank of Springfield stood in the town center, an old stone building with grand columns, a landmark I'd passed countless times on my mail route. I rarely went inside, preferring ATMs and paying bills at the post office, the old-fashioned way. Inside, the bank had changed since my last visit. Fewer tellers, more computers, young men in suits behind glass partitions. Bright posters advertised loans, investments, things that felt alien to my generation. In the office, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit greeted me. He introduced himself as Morton Higgs, head of the mortgage department, alongside Alice Farrow from legal. "Mr. Harrington," Higgs said after handshakes, as I sat across from them. "You told our colleague yesterday that your signature on loan documents may be forged. That's a grave claim. We'd like to discuss it in detail." I nodded, pulling the printed documents from my briefcase. "I never signed these," I said, pointing to the signature on the guarantee agreement. "That's not my handwriting. I didn't even know about this loan until I checked my email yesterday and saw your notices." Farrow took the papers, studying the signature closely. "Do you have documents with your real signature for comparison?" she asked. I handed over my passport, driver's license, and recent checks. She compared them carefully, occasionally glancing at me over her glasses. "The signatures are clearly different," she said at last. "Mr. Harrington, are you prepared to make an official statement about the forgery, possibly to the police?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm certain of what I'm saying." "Can you suggest who might have forged it?" Higgs asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew. "My son, Michael Harrington," I said, bitterness rising. "He's the only one with motive and opportunity. The loans for his business, his application." Higgs nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "Mr. Harrington, here's what happens next. We'll suspend the loan and start an internal investigation. If the forgery is confirmed, we must involve law enforcement. Forging a signature on financial documents is a felony." I took a deep breath. Despite my resolve, the thought of Michael facing charges weighed heavily. "I understand," I said, "but there's more." Higgs raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I also want to withdraw my guarantee on the mortgage loan," I said. "The one from 4 years ago for my son's house." "That's more complicated," Higgs said, frowning. "Unlike the business loan, your signature on that is genuine." "I presume, yes." I confirmed, but I agreed to be guarantor under conditions. Michael promised no additional loans against the property without my consent. He broke that by forging my signature. "That's a material breach." "You're correct," Higgs said slowly. Exchanging a look with Farrow, "The bank can renegotiate agreements if there's evidence of fraud. But this would have serious consequences for your son. Revoking the mortgage guarantee means he'd need to repay the loan immediately or provide new collateral, or we'd initiate foreclosure." I stayed silent, weighing the stakes. I didn't want my grandkids homeless because of their father's mistakes, but Michael needed a lesson to stop his reckless path. "I have a proposal," I said finally. "Freeze the business loan and investigate the forgery. For the mortgage, I'll continue as guarantor, but only if all payments go through me. Michael sends the money to me, and I pay the bank. That way, I ensure payments are timely and complete." We spent the next hour hashing out details. I signed the forgery statement, agreed to cooperate with the investigation, and finalized new mortgage terms. Higgs said they'd contact Michael that day to summon him to the bank. I left around noon, the spring sun harsh in my eyes. I donned the old hat I kept in the car and decided to walk downtown to clear my head. My phone buzzed in my jacket. Michael's name on the screen. The bank had reached him. I answered, bracing myself. "Hello, what did you do?" His voice trembled with rage. "Do you realize what you've done?" "Hello, son," I said calmly. "I take it the bank called. They froze my company's accounts, blocked my credit, and want me to explain some signature forgery. What are they talking about?" I stayed quiet, letting him vent. Silence can be more powerful than words. "Dad, are you there? Answer me." "I'm here," I said. "And it's clear. You forged my signature for the loan. I found out and reported it. Simple as that." "Look," he said, his tone softening. "I admit I was wrong about the signature. It was stupid. But this contract is a once-in-a-lifetime shot. If I lose it, I'll never get another like it. I can triple the print shop's revenue, hire more staff, level up. And you were willing to frame your own father for it," I asked. "If you couldn't pay, the bank would come after me. I could lose everything, my house, my savings, all I have left." "I wouldn't let that happen," Michael said, his confidence unshaken. "It was all calculated. The contract's payments would cover the loans and more. You've always been sure of your plans." I said, "Remember high school, the comic book store, the internet cafe, the travel agency? They all crashed the same way. You lost interest, lost money, and your mom and I bailed you out. Let's meet and talk like adults. I'm coming over now. 20 minutes. Michael arrived exactly on time, his face flushed with anger, hair disheveled, tie crooked. He looked like he'd bolted from his office in a panic, abandoning his usual polish. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I made tea." "Tea." He gave a bitter laugh as I carried in the tray. "Really, you've ruined my life. And you're offering tea. I didn't ruin your life." "Michael," I said, setting the tray on the coffee table, "you put it at risk when you forged my signature." "It was a technicality," he shouted, "just a signature on paper, and you turned it into a disaster." "No, son," I said, shaking my head. "It's not just a signature. It's a crime. And not your first misstep." "What are you talking about?" he demanded, frowning. "The laxative you put in my glass," I reminded him. "The years you've manipulated me to get what you want. Turning Susan against me. Even trying to sway Emily. You're paranoid." "Dad," he said, cutting me off. "Seeing conspiracies where there are none." "Am I?" I raised an eyebrow. "Explain why you didn't ask my permission for the loan. Why you acted in secret." He looked away, jaw tight. "I told you I was saving time. The contract had to be signed fast, or it'd go to someone else." "So you risked your freedom and my security." I said, "It wasn't about time. You knew I'd say no." "Of course you would," he exploded. "You always say no. Always block my success when I wanted business school. You pushed community college. When I wanted to move to Chicago, you and Mom convinced me to stay in Springfield. My whole life. You've clipped my wings, and now you're surprised I didn't come begging again." His words hit like a storm. There was truth in them. Mary and I had urged caution, advising against business school until he had a clear path, worrying about a big city move with no plan. But it was out of love, to shield him from failure, not to hold him back. "Your mom and I always wanted the best for you," I said quietly. "We supported your serious ventures. Who gave you the money for your first printing press? Who helped with the house down payment? And you've been throwing that back at me ever since." Michael muttered, "Every time something goes wrong, you remind me what you've done." "What happens now?" he asked finally. "The loan, the business, the house, that's up to you." I said, "I offered the bank a compromise. They'll keep the mortgage if payments go through me. You send the money. I pay it. Like a kid who can't handle money," he said with a bitter smirk. "Like a man who's broken trust." I corrected. The business loan's under investigation. If they confirm the forgery, and they will, it could go to the police. Michael paled. Is that what you want your son prosecuted for fraud? Of course not, I said, shaking my head. But you need to grasp the seriousness. You crossed a line, Michael, and you'll face consequences. Any other financing options, investors, partners? He shook his head. I tried. No one wants to invest in a small Springfield business, too small a market, too risky. What about selling a stake in the company I suggested? Any employees who could partner? Maybe, he said, uncertain. Harvey, my deputy, has wanted in for a while, but his money alone won't cut it. Start there, I advised. Talk to Harvey. Find other investors. Be honest with the bank. Admit your mistake. Offer a repayment plan. And the house, he asked. If the bank pulls the mortgage I've told you, I interrupted. I'll stay guarantor under new terms. You won't lose the house if you're up front with me. Michael sat silent, mulling my words. Then, unexpectedly, he asked, "Why are you doing this, after everything I've said and done?" "Why help me?" I smiled, a sad twist of my lips. "Because you're my son, and your mother would never forgive me if I let you fall when I could hold out a hand." At Mary's mention, his eyes glistened. He turned away quickly, hiding his emotions. "I don't understand you, Dad," he said softly. "You could have ignored the forgery, and everything would have been fine. Instead, you stirred up trouble, and now you're offering help." "I didn't cause the trouble," I said, shaking my head. "You did, when you chose to deceive your own father. I just made sure you couldn't dodge the consequences. Sometimes, that's what help means, letting someone face their mistakes and fix them." News travels fast in a small town like Springfield, especially when it's a scandal like fraud. By evening, after my talk with Michael, Emily called, her voice tight with worry, almost fear. "Dad, is it true what Robert heard? That Michael forged your signature on bank documents?" I sighed. Some bank clerk must know Robert Springfield's too small to keep secrets. "Yes, honey, it's true," I said, resolved to be honest with her. "Your brother took a business loan using my signature without my knowledge." Silence hung on the line. I could picture Emily rubbing her forehead, a habit she'd picked up from Mary when stressed or confused. "I can't believe it," she said finally. "I mean, it's a crime. Dad, what happens now?" "I've spoken with Michael," I said. "We're trying to sort it out. The bank's investigating. But I hope we can settle it without police." "Oh my God," she whispered. "What about Susan, the kids? Do they know?" "I'm not sure," I replied honestly. "Michael came alone. He might not have told them yet." "I'm coming over," she said firmly. "Tomorrow. Robert will stay with the kids, and I'll be there. We need to talk as a family." I wanted to protest, to keep her out of the conflict, but her support warmed me. Emily and I hadn't been close in recent years, and her standing by me now meant more than I could say. "Okay," I said. "I'll be waiting." The next morning, as I ate my oatmeal, the doorbell rang. It was Michael, looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept. Behind him stood Susan, pale and tense, her hands clasped tightly. "Can we come in?" Michael asked, his usual confidence gone. I stepped aside silently, letting them into the kitchen, where my half-eaten breakfast sat. "Sorry for the early visit," he said, sitting at the table. Susan sat beside him, hands folded like a nervous schoolgirl. We talked all night and decided to come before I go to the bank. I sat across, waiting for them to speak. I was wrong, Michael said. Meeting my eyes, forging your signature was unforgivable. And the laxative at my birthday. He shook his head. I don't know what possessed me. I was lost, I guess. Susan placed a hand on his shoulder. We both were. Earl, she said, addressing me directly for the first time in years. Michael told me everything, the signature, the laxative, your talk yesterday. I was in shock. I couldn't believe we'd sunk so low. I looked at them, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive, to erase it all and return to how things were. But another part remembered the years of distance, the small betrayals, the times Michael and Susan put their own needs above family. What changed your mind, I asked finally. Yesterday. You were ready to accuse me of everything. Michael, now you're here apologizing. What happened? They exchanged a glance. The truth, Michael said. That's what happened. When I got home yesterday, Susan knew something was wrong. I told her about our talk, the bank freezing the accounts, the investigation. She asked me straight out, did you really forge your father's signature? I couldn't lie to her. Not after everything. Susan squeezed his hand. I was furious. She admitted. I'd never seen Michael so small. He confessed everything, not just the forgery, but the birthday plan to make you look helpless, to push you to sell the house, and years of manipulating you for money. Did you make him come here? I asked. No, Michael said, shaking his head. It was my choice. After Susan laid into me. We talked for hours about us, our family, the example we're setting for our kids. I realized I'd become what I always hated, a man who'd betray his own for profit. I sat silent, trying to process their words. Their sincerity felt real, but I knew Michael too well to trust a sudden shift without caution. What do you want from me? I asked bluntly. Nothing. Michael said, I'd love for you to withdraw the forgery statement, but I know I can't ask that. I'm here to own up and say I'll take responsibility. I'm going to the bank to confess. What about the print shop? The contract, I asked. I spoke with Harvey, like you suggested. Michael said, he's willing to invest and become a partner. It's not enough money, but it's a start. We might find other investors. If not, we'll lose the contract. It'll hurt, but it's not the end. I looked at my son, searching for the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager who'd asked for love advice, the young man who'd held my hand at Mary's funeral when I was breaking. I'll talk to the bank, I said finally. Maybe we can find a way to protect your reputation in business, but on one condition. What's that? Michael leaned forward. No more secrets. No more manipulation. No more deciding my life for me. I'm your father, not a hurdle to your success. He nodded. I promise, I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back, even if it takes years. The doorbell rang, interrupting us. I excused myself and found Emily on the doorstep, her face set with determination. Dad, she said, hugging me tightly. How are you then? Peering past me. She saw Michael and Susan in the kitchen. Oh, you're already here. Willow Michael looked surprised. What are you doing here, same as you, I suppose, she said, stepping inside, trying to make sense of this mess. We sat around the kitchen table for the next hour, hashing out the situation. Emily was tougher than I expected, not holding back her disappointment in her brother. You should have thought about the consequences, she said, staring at Michael. What if Dad hadn't found the forgery? What if you couldn't pay the loan? The bank would have taken his house, the only thing he has left of Mom. I know, Michael said quietly. I didn't think it through. Or rather, I only thought of the gains, not the risks. Not the first time, Emily added. You've always been like this, assuming the world bends to you. Remember when you borrowed my car without asking and crashed it? Or when you told Mom you needed money for school books and bought concert tickets? Michael looked down. I remember, and I'm ashamed. Shame's good, Emily said. It means you get what you did. But understanding's not enough, you have to act to fix it. Susan, who'd been quiet, spoke up. We have a plan, she said. Michael and I talked it through last night. He'll confess to the bank about the forgery and offer to repay the loan in installments. We'll sell our second car for a down payment. And, as Michael said, he'll offer Harvey a stake in the business. Maybe find other investors. And Dad's house, Emily asked. Still pushing him to sell, Susan shook her head. No, we were wrong to pressure him. It's his house, his choice. I listened, feeling an unexpected relief. For the first time in years, we were having an open, honest talk. No hidden agendas. Even if Michael and Susan weren't entirely sincere, this was progress. I think we all need to change, I said as the conversation wound down. I'm not blameless in our strained relationships. After Mary died, I closed myself off, pulled away from you all. Maybe if I'd been more open, things would have been different. Dad, don't blame yourself, Emily said. You had every right to grieve your way. True, I said. But 6 years is too long to live in the past. Mary would want me to move forward, to be part of your lives, your kids' lives. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I have a proposal, a compromise. They looked at me, intrigued. I won't sell the house, I said, but I could turn the annex into a small apartment for myself. A separate entrance. All I need. The main house, I said, looking at Michael and Susan. Could be for family gatherings, where the grandkids can stay weekends, where we celebrate holidays together, a family hub. That's a wonderful idea, Emily said slowly, mulling it over. You keep the house, but it serves us all. We could help renovate the annex, Michael added. I'm handy with construction, and Harvey's a former electrician. He could handle new wiring. I could design it, Susan offered, her voice warm with genuine enthusiasm. Make it cozy and comfortable for you. We kept talking, the idea taking shape. The annex, once a workshop, could become a snug apartment with heating, plumbing, and a new bathroom. By noon, we had a rough plan. Michael would go to the bank and confess. I'd speak to the manager, asking for leniency since he'd come clean. Emily offered to help with legal matters. As Robert knew a good lawyer, Susan promised to start planning the annex renovation. As Michael and Susan left, my son paused in the doorway. Thank you, Dad, he said, for giving me a chance to make this right. I won't let you down again. I nodded, my throat tight. Something in his tone, his look, echoed the closeness we'd once had. Maybe there was hope yet. Emily stayed, and we sat in the living room, sipping tea, reminiscing about Mary, the kids' childhood, days when the future seemed boundless. Do you think he's really changed? Emily asked about Michael. Or is this just guilt until he's out of trouble? I don't know. I said honestly, people can change, but it's slow, hard. Michael's always been impulsive, chasing shortcuts, but he's also capable of real love. Time will tell. And you, she asked, studying me. Can you forgive him after all this? I'm trying, I said, "Forgiveness is a journey, not a switch. I want to believe he can change, but trust is earned. We'll see how he acts in the coming months." Emily smiled. "You're an amazing man, Dad. After everything, you still give people chances. Mom would be proud." Her words warmed me, easing the doubts I'd carried since Mary's death. I'd often wondered what she'd do in my place, and maybe I was finally finding my own way. The weeks that followed buzzed with activity. Michael kept his word, confessing the forgery to the bank. With my plea and his honesty, they opted not to involve the police, imposing a fine and a temporary credit freeze instead. The business loan was canceled, but Michael secured other investors, including Harvey, enough to meet the contract's minimum needs. The annex renovation began swiftly. Michael came every weekend with tools and materials, sometimes with Harvey or other friends. Emily and Robert pitched in when they could, and even the grandkids joined. Jack wielded a hammer with surprising skill, while Sophie picked out wall colors and curtains with glee. Susan's attitude toward me transformed. She called daily, discussing layouts, bringing fabric swatches and furniture catalogs. One day, she admitted she'd always felt uneasy around me, fearing I judged her as unworthy of Michael. "I was wrong," she said. "I pushed you away instead of getting to know you." It felt too late. Until now. "It's never too late for new beginnings," I said, echoing Mary's belief in change. By early summer, the annex was complete: 70 square feet of personal space, a bedroom, small living area, kitchenette, and bathroom. Modern yet touched with the antique charm I loved. Thanks to Susan's thoughtful design, moving day was a true family affair. Michael grilled in the backyard. Emily baked Mary's apple pie from an old recipe, and the grandkids raced through the garden, playing hide-and-seek. Watching them, I felt a forgotten sense of belonging stir, a family reknitting itself. That evening, alone in my new living room, I looked out at the main house, its windows glowing warmly. I thought of Mary, how she'd poured her heart into that home. She'd approve of this choice. I knew, keeping the house alive for the family in a new way. I pulled out her old silver watch, a 20th anniversary gift. Long stopped but carried as a talisman. Maybe it was time to fix it. Let it tick again. Time to move forward. Not forgetting the past, but not trapped in it. By standing up to Michael's manipulations, I'd reclaimed my dignity and, strangely, earned my family's respect. Not the shallow kind born of fear or gain, but a deeper understanding. A new chapter was opening. Fragile but hopeful. The annex was my sanctuary, letting me live independently. My routines intact. The main house would welcome the grandkids' laughter, new memories filling its walls. It was a compromise that worked for us all, honoring the past while making room for the future. I set the kettle on and opened a box of old photos from the main house. Faded snapshots held moments time couldn't steal. Mary, young and radiant, holding baby Emily. Michael on his first bike, proud yet nervous. A lakeside picnic. All of us laughing at a forgotten joke. These were treasures no one could take, but they were a foundation, not a cage, a base for new bonds, new traditions, a new life. The kettle whistled. Pulling me back, I poured tea, not into a single cup as usual, but into the small teapot Susan had given me as a housewarming gift. "For guests," she'd said with a smile, and I realized there would be guests now: children, grandkids, maybe new friends. Life was moving on, offering new paths, new horizons. I sat in the armchair by the window, where Mary once knitted, and raised my cup in a quiet toast. To new beginnings. Mary, I thought. To the family we built. To the future just starting.